5 years is a long time to love someone in silence. Not the kind of silence that means the absence of sound, but the kind that grows between two people who share a life without daring to ask where it's going. That was the space Claire had learned to live in. Not unhappily, just quietly. They had met in the clatter and chaos of their late 20s. Both just out of grad school, both trying to make something of themselves in a city that measured success in rent paid and brunch reservations secured. Evan had been sharp-eyed, quick-witted, disarming in his charm but oddly grounded. Claire had liked that. She had liked the way he listened, the way he challenged her in debates, and the way he folded laundry while talking about philosophy like the two were somehow connected. What began as weekends together had evolved, organically, as they always said, into shared cabinets, duplicate keys, one Netflix account, and finally, one lease. They moved in together on a cold Wednesday in November, both wearing sweaters too old to keep and socks that didn't match. Claire remembered thinking, as they collapsed on the floor of their new apartment, pizza box between them, that this must be what certainty felt like. That certainty had lasted a long time, long enough to merge finances, adopt a cat, switch family holiday plans on rotation. They fought, sure, but not destructively, not in ways that left scars. They compromised, joked, consoled, and touched each other's backs lightly in crowded rooms like tiny beacons of possession. But as years stretched, something began to shift, not between them exactly, but around them. Friends started marrying, then buying homes, then having children. Conversations over wine turned from dreams to timelines. And Claire, for all her modern sensibilities, began to wonder why Evan had never asked. He loved her, she knew that. She felt it in the way he remembered to charge her Kindle, or the way he brewed her coffee just the way she liked it on Saturday mornings. But 5 years in, she realized something crucial. Love alone wasn't the same as commitment. There had never been a conversation they didn't finish. But there were questions she had stopped asking. Like, do you still see us getting married? Or, is there something you're waiting for? She stopped asking not because she didn't want to know, but because she feared she already did. Evan had grown quieter in the last 6 months. Not withdrawn, just harder to reach. His phone was always in his pocket now. Even during dinner, when he laughed at something on the screen, he rarely showed her anymore. He still kissed her goodnight, still held her hand in public, but the pauses between them were longer now, filled with the unspoken. Claire told herself it was stress. His job had become more demanding. There were more trips, more late nights, more glazed looks over the dinner table. She offered support, even space, but she couldn't help noticing that he was no longer dreaming aloud with her. Once, they had made a list of wedding songs in jest. Now, even when she brought up a friend's engagement, his face remained unreadable. She had imagined the proposal 100 ways. He'd always been thoughtful. She believed he was planning something quiet, maybe intimate. She pictured a note left beside her toothbrush, or a walk in the park where he'd suddenly drop to one knee. Not with a crowd but with confidence. She believed in it so deeply that it became a fact in her mind. Of course he was going to ask. They had been through too much not to. The job losses, the sick parents, the shared griefs and victories. They had made it through. That had to mean something. But recently, she had started waking up in the middle of the night with a different kind of certainty, an unease that something had already shifted while she was still waiting. She noticed how he never talked about the future anymore with we. She noticed how her birthday passed without a moment that felt significant. She noticed how he started locking his screen even when he wasn't looking at anything. She didn't want to become suspicious. Suspicion felt like a betrayal of trust. But so did feeling like she was waiting for a bus whose schedule had quietly been cancelled. One Sunday morning, she watched him reading on the couch. A blanket pulled around him, sunlight catching in the scruff on his jaw. And she thought, I don't know if he's the one I'm meant to grow old with, or the one I'm supposed to let go of before I forget what I need. 5 years, 5 birthdays, 5 Christmas trees, 5 times she said, I love you, and waited for a different kind of answer. But the truth she had begun to understand was simple. They shared everything: groceries, bills, bad television, good wine, everything except the one thing she couldn't ask for without risking the whole thing: a promise. And lately, what kept them together felt less like devotion, and more like momentum. Like neither of them wanted to be the one who broke the stillness. But sometimes, the longer you stay still, the easier it is for someone to quietly start walking away, while you're still watching the door, expecting them to kneel. It happened on a Wednesday. Not the kind of day that marks itself in memory, just a midweek blur of rain, cold coffee, and a forgotten grocery list. Evan had rushed out early for work, barely kissing Claire's cheek as he muttered something about back-to-back meetings. She had the day off, a rare moment of stillness, which she had planned to use catching up on job applications. Her current contract position was ending soon, and though Evan had said not to worry, she worried anyway. She always did. Her laptop had been acting up for weeks. Sluggish, glitchy, and increasingly unreliable. She decided to use Evan's. He rarely minded before. They'd always shared everything: passwords, playlists, even a mutual Google Calendar titled Us. She knew the password. It hadn't changed in years. The laptop opened smoothly. Chrome launched automatically. A few tabs were still open: ESPN, a local news site, and Gmail. Claire was about to open a fresh browser when she saw the subject line of the first unread email. Order confirmation, diamond engagement ring. Her heart skipped, then fluttered like paper caught in wind. She hadn't meant to click. Her finger moved before her brain did. The email opened. A sleek, corporate layout from a high-end jewelry company. There was an image of a ring, vintage-inspired, solitaire cut, with a delicately twisted band. Her favorite, one she had pointed out months ago while pretending not to care. Her breath caught in her throat. Then her eyes dropped to the name in the shipping address. To Madison Clark, not Claire. She read it again, and again, as if her brain needed time to compute the betrayal. As if repetition could rewrite the truth. But the name didn't change. Neither did the address. It wasn't even their apartment. Madison Clark. She didn't know the name. Not as a friend, not as a colleague, not even as a passing mention in Evan's wide orbit. She wasn't a coworker Claire had heard of. Or a cousin, or anyone who should be receiving a ring Evan had chosen with that much care. She stared at the screen until her vision blurred. Her hand hovered above the trackpad. The browser history was there. Tabs, search logs, but she couldn't move, couldn't pry herself deeper into the spiral. She already knew what she needed to know. The ring wasn't for her. Her mouth went dry, her body went cold, but not with rage, with something slower, something deeper, disbelief so dense it made her feel hollow. A cruel twist, the very object she'd been waiting for, the confirmation she believed would mark their future, was now the thing that confirmed her absence from it. She closed the lid of the laptop, slowly, as if doing it any faster might make a sound she couldn't bear. She stood up, walked to the window. Rain streaked the glass in soft lines. The city moved beneath her. Indifferent, people lived whole lives outside while hers had just splintered in an email tab. There was no dramatic reaction, no scream, no thrown objects, just silence. The kind of silence that only comes when a truth lands so loudly inside your chest. It mutes the world around you. She didn't text him, didn't call. She needed time to feel what she was feeling without interruption, without the guilt of making someone else uncomfortable with her pain. She made tea, didn't drink it. She sat on the couch, legs curled beneath her, staring at the wall for longer than she realized. In her mind, she kept seeing the ring, not on her finger, but on someone else's, a stranger, a woman with a name that now rang like a bell she could never unhear. And beneath all of it was a slow, steady realization: the future she thought she was building with him was being built somewhere else, by someone else, and she had just read the blueprint. It hadn't been a scream, a betrayal caught in a moment of passion, a lipstick on a collar. It had been a clean transaction, intentional, planned, and that, somehow, hurt more. Because he wasn't confused. He was certain. He had just forgotten to log out. Claire didn't sleep that night. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her thoughts spinning in perfect silence. She hadn't confronted him immediately. There was nothing to confront. The evidence didn't scream. It whispered in complete sentences. It carried a subject line and a shipping address and the shape of a ring that had once danced behind her eyelids at night. She didn't need more. In the morning, she made coffee, toasted a slice of bread she didn't eat. Then she opened Evan's laptop again, not to read, not to dig, but to print. The email, one page, clean, unedited. She placed it on the dining table, dead center. Then she sat across from it, staring like it was a mirror that only reflected everything she hadn't wanted to see. He came home late. Rain dampened the shoulders of his coat, and he dropped his keys in the bowl by the door with the same rhythm he had for years. Habit, routine, the choreography of domestic life. He walked into the kitchen, said her name, paused when she didn't answer. Then he saw the paper. Claire didn't speak, didn't rise. She just watched him read. His eyes moved once, down, then stopped. He didn't flinch, didn't gasp. He just sat down slowly, as if his body already knew the gravity of what was coming. When he finally looked up, his face wasn't guilty, it wasn't defiant either. It was empty, like a man who'd been found out. Not for what he did, but for what he meant to do. "I love you," he said quietly, "but I don't want to marry you." The sentence dropped like a coin in a well. Long pause, no echo. Claire's voice didn't waver. "Since when?" He exhaled, like the question had been chasing him for months. "Since you started assuming I would." The answer didn't sting because of its harshness. It stung because of its truth. He hadn't betrayed her with a stranger. He had betrayed her with clarity he hadn't shared. He had been waiting for a moment that made not proposing feel justifiable. And now it was here, neatly printed in Times New Roman. She didn't ask who Madison was. She didn't want to say her name. It was already written between them. "No one forced you to stay," she said. "I didn't stay out of pity." He replied. "I know," she said. "You stayed out of fear. Fear of being the one who breaks something." There was no shouting, no storm, just two people unraveling in quiet, deliberate honesty. Evan's hands were clasped in front of him, fingers threaded like a man in prayer. "I thought maybe we could keep what we had," he said, "that it was enough." Claire shook her head slowly. "Enough for who?" Silence again. She rose from the table, walked past him, and stopped in the doorway. She didn't turn back. "You could have told me," she said. "I didn't know how," he admitted. "That's the difference between love and partnership," she said. "Love waits. Partnership speaks." She went to the bedroom. Not to cry, not to pack, yet, but to sit in the stillness that comes when the illusion ends and the truth finally breathes. And in that room, Claire didn't feel broken. She felt awake. Because nothing shatters you more gently than being told you were never the future someone planned for. You were just the place they stayed until it arrived. Claire didn't sleep that night. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her thoughts spinning in perfect silence. She hadn't confronted him immediately. There was nothing to confront. The evidence didn't scream. It whispered in complete sentences. It carried a subject line and a shipping address and the shape of a ring that had once danced behind her eyelids at night. She didn't need more. In the morning, she made coffee, toasted a slice of bread she didn't eat. Then she opened Evan's laptop again, not to read, not to dig, but to print. The email, one page, clean, unedited. She placed it on the dining table, dead center. Then she sat across from it, staring like it was a mirror that only reflected everything she hadn't wanted to see. He came home late. Rain dampened the shoulders of his coat, and he dropped his keys in the bowl by the door with the same rhythm he had for years. Habit, routine, the choreography of domestic life. He walked into the kitchen, said her name, paused when she didn't answer. Then he saw the paper. Claire didn't speak, didn't rise. She just watched him read. His eyes moved once, down, then stopped. He didn't flinch, didn't gasp. He just sat down slowly, as if his body already knew the gravity of what was coming. When he finally looked up, his face wasn't guilty, it wasn't defiant either, it was empty, like a man who'd been found out, not for what he did, but for what he meant to do. "I love you," he said quietly, "but I don't want to marry you." The sentence dropped like a coin in a well. Long pause, no echo. Claire's voice didn't waver. "Since when?" He exhaled, like the question had been chasing him for months. "Since you started assuming I would." The answer didn't sting because of its harshness. It stung because of its truth. He hadn't betrayed her with a stranger. He had betrayed her with clarity he hadn't shared. He had been waiting for a moment that made not proposing feel justifiable. And now it was here, neatly printed in Times New Roman. She didn't ask who Madison was. She didn't want to say her name. It was already written between them. "No one forced you to stay," she said. "I didn't stay out of pity." He replied. "I know," she said. "You stayed out of fear. Fear of being the one who breaks something." There was no shouting, no storm, just two people unraveling in quiet, deliberate honesty. Evan's hands were clasped in front of him, fingers threaded like a man in prayer. "I thought maybe we could keep what we had," he said, "that it was enough." Claire shook her head slowly. "Enough for who?" Silence again. She rose from the table, walked past him, and stopped in the doorway. She didn't turn back. "You could have told me," she said. "I didn't know how," he admitted. "That's the difference between love and partnership," she said. "Love waits. Partnership speaks." She went to the bedroom. Not to cry, not to pack, yet, but to sit in the stillness that comes when the illusion ends and the truth finally breathes. And in that room, Claire didn't feel broken. She felt awake. Because nothing shatters you more gently than being told you were never the future someone planned for. You were just the place they stayed until it arrived. The ring box felt heavier than he remembered. Evan turned it in his hands as he sat on the park bench, watching the golden light settle over the tops of trees. It was a quiet corner of the city park, the same one where he and Claire had once sat after their first real argument, sharing melting ice cream and too many apologies. But this day wasn't about Claire. Not anymore. He had called Madison 2 days earlier, told her he had something important to ask, told her he wanted it to be private. Just the two of them. No photographers, no dramatic speeches, just honesty. Madison arrived 15 minutes late, her heels clicking against the stone path, sunglasses hiding her expression. She wore blue, the color Claire once said made her look like a promise someone kept. Evan stood when he saw her, smiled the way he always did when he wasn't sure if he was about to win or lose. They sat, talked briefly, laughed in a way that felt forced at first, then softened. Evan took a deep breath, the ring box pressed tight in his palm. And then he said it. "Madison, I've made mistakes. I stayed too long in something that wasn't right, hoping it would fix itself. But with you, I see something clear. I see peace. I see a future that doesn't feel like a negotiation." He opened the box. The diamond caught the last of the day's sun. "I want to try again, with you. For real. Let's make this ours." Madison looked at the ring, then at him. Her smile didn't fade, but it changed. Shifted from curiosity to something gentler, more distant. "Evan," she said softly, "you're a good man." He exhaled, almost relieved. "But not for me." It took a moment for the words to settle. "I don't understand," he said. She didn't flinch. "I think you loved her, Claire, more than you realized, more than you admitted. And I think this," she gestured to the ring, "is a way of proving to yourself that you're not the villain in your own story." He looked down, the ring still gleaming in its velvet nest. "You're trying to move forward," she continued, "but you skip the part where you sit with what you broke. Where you let it change you." "I didn't want to hurt her," he said. "But you did," Madison said, "and you haven't stopped long enough to feel what that really means." She stood, smoothed her skirt. "I hope you do. I really do, because there's someone out there who will need you to be whole. Not just ready." Then she walked away. No theatrics, no anger, just quiet grace. Evan sat there for a long time. The park began to empty. Children were called home. Dogs led owners toward dimming streets. The light faded, and still he sat, ring box in hand, wondering when exactly he had mistaken momentum for love. Claire hadn't left because he stopped loving her. She left because he didn't choose her. And now, standing in the same shoes, asking someone else to choose him, he finally knew what it meant to be the one left standing. Alone, with a future unlived and a gesture unanswered. He closed the box, and for the first time, he didn't feel like a man waiting for something. He felt like a man who had missed it entirely. The cafe was nearly empty. Late afternoon sun slanted through the windows, brushing golden light across the worn wood of the floor and the corner table where Claire sat. She had chosen this place not because it was quiet, but because it had held so many versions of her, the student hunched over a thesis, the woman writing cover letters, the partner waiting on coffee for two. Today, she was simply herself, alone, but not lonely. She held a book in her hand, its spine soft from use, though she hadn't turned a page in 10 minutes. Her tea had gone cold, but her breathing was steady, her shoulders relaxed. There was a kind of peace in stillness when it wasn't weighed down by waiting. The door jingled open, and a familiar voice broke through. Claire, she looked up. It was Leela, an old friend she hadn't seen in months. The kind of friend whose presence felt like a soft landing. No explanation required. Leela sat down across from her, taking in the half-read book. The cold tea, the ringless hand. I heard, Leela said softly. Claire didn't flinch. About Evan? Leela nodded. I'm sorry, she added. Claire gave a faint smile, the kind that didn't stretch too far but reached deep. Don't be, she said. I stayed because I thought love would eventually call itself a future. Leela leaned forward. But he loved you, didn't he? Claire folded the book shut gently. Yes, she said, enough to stay, but not enough to choose. There was a pause, one that didn't feel heavy, just honest. Do you regret it? Leela asked. Claire shook her head. No, I was with him long enough to know that he loved me. But not clearly, not loudly, not with the kind of certainty that says, you are where I want to build. Leela looked down. It's hard to walk away from someone who still loves you. Claire nodded. It's harder to stay when they can't say your name while imagining the future. They sat in silence for a moment, watching the city carry on outside. People walked by with takeout bags and phone calls and errands that mattered. Did he ever cheat? Leela asked. Claire smiled, sad, amused. Not with his body, but he left me behind in his mind a long time ago. He just never said it out loud. And that was the truth she had come to accept. Evan hadn't broken her heart with betrayal. He had dimmed it with ambiguity, with the slow erosion of clarity, with the comfort of routine mistaken for commitment. I didn't leave because I stopped loving him, she added. I left because I stopped waiting. Leela reached across the table and touched her hand. Claire didn't pull away. You seem at peace, Leela said. I am, Claire replied, for the first time in years. I'm not sitting in a room waiting for someone else to name the relationship I'm in. I get to decide what I'm worth. She picked up the book again but didn't open it, just held it in her lap like something solid. Outside, the light began to soften into dusk. Claire looked out the window, not to watch for someone, not to imagine someone coming back, but just to look, just to be. And in that stillness, she whispered to herself, not a promise, not a vow, just a knowing. Loving someone isn't enough if they can't say your name when talking about the future. And as the shadows lengthened and the day folded into evening, Claire sat quietly, steady in herself, because time shared means nothing if commitment never arrives. And choosing yourself isn't a dramatic act. Sometimes, it's as simple as walking away before you disappear into someone else's maybe.